Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's still a good morning here in the UK, and it's a good afternoon across Europe. Welcome to the European Marketing Confederation's webinar entitled European Marketing Agenda 2021, Looking Back and Looking Forward. My name is Professor Jonathan Beacon, and welcome to my home here in South Wales in the UK. I'm Professor of Marketing at the University of South Wales, and I'm also Vice Chair of the European Marketing Confederation. And it is a pleasure and a delight to welcome you to our webinar today. In February 2021, we launched the findings of the agenda, and at that time we had a good discussion about what they were and what the outcomes were likely to be, and the impact of those outcomes on us during this last year. Now, I think we will all agree that the last 2 years have been some of the most testing periods for professional marketing that any of us are ever likely to remember. And we looked at those outcomes, and we had 10 key areas for action which came out of the agenda. I'll just run through them as a way of just looking back at what they were. So we had customer experience management, purpose-driven marketing, CRM, sustainable marketing, return on marketing investments, organizational change, including diversity and inclusion, direct-to-consumer strategies, MarTech, creative leadership, and data management. And our conclusion of the agenda of 2021, as I said, launched in February this year, was that it wasn't a case of one or the other, X or Y, but it was a case of X and Y. And today, what I'd like to do is to revisit those issues, those areas, and take a look at how they may have changed and what may still be pertinent to us. And to do that, we have 3 leading marketers to share their thoughts on 2021. And so Sandra's been busy whizzing through the slides. Sandra, if you can go back to the first slide for the EMC, just to remind everybody what the EMC is about, that would be fantastic. Back again, please. Okay, and back again. Yeah, so the EMC, the European Marketing Confederation, in a nutshell, is this. We are a strong peer-to-peer network of like-minded associations, where knowledge and experience is shared throughout the network for the benefit of professional marketers and the marketing profession throughout Europe. And the EMC believe that high standards of professional integrity are key to the success of our marketing profession. So we are about developing, setting, and maintaining standards within the industry, and we see that as a vital part of what we do here at the EMC. And part of that peer-to-peer network and sharing of experience and thought is indeed now our annual agenda, our European marketing agenda. Next slide, please, Sandra. So the agenda for today, next slide, please, is pretty simple, really. My introduction, which I'm halfway through, and then we're going to have our 3 key speakers. Catarina Barradas, who's Brand Global Unit Director at EDP. We're going to have some thoughts about sustainability from Gemma Butler, who's the Marketing Director at the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK. And we're going to have further thoughts about diversity and inclusion from Claire Kemsley, Managing Director at Hayes Marketing, also here in the UK. And we're going to have those presentations back to back and then come together in a roundtable plenary discussion. And what we're asking you to do, please, because there is quite a number of us online today, rather than coming on to sound and camera to ask your question, if you can place those questions in the chat box. And then as moderator, I will attempt to bring those questions together in some sensible format and ask our speakers to comment on them in due course and if they so wish. The plan is that this session and this webinar will last no longer than 90 minutes, and I will keep you to time on that, so no worries there. Next slide, please, Sandra. So when I approached our speakers to speak at this webinar, I posed a question. I asked Catarina, Gemma and Claire to think about partly the outcome of our Agenda 21 and those areas that I've gone through, those key areas of action, and also to think about what may have changed during the last year and to highlight those changes, and particularly from their own practice perspective. So I think, Sandra, can we have the next slide? Okay, so this is, I've mentioned a little bit about this, about some of the outcomes for the from the Agenda 21, and I'll talk about the Agenda 2022 before we complete our webinar today. Next slide, please. Without further ado, can I introduce Catarina Barradas from EDP to talk to us about repositioning the energy transition, the EDP Challenge Tomorrow Now case study. Catarina.
Hey, thanks a lot. Sandra, can I please share my presentation instead? It would be easier for me to be...
Yes, please
Yeah.
go. Yes, okay. Thank you.
You have to stop sharing your presentation.
I've paused mine.
Okay.
I shall.
All right, so let me share my screen. Hold on. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hold on. Okay. So first of all, hello everyone. And first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm really honored to participate in this event. So I'm Catarina Barradas. I'm the Brand Global Unit Director at EDP. And today, more than discuss the agenda, I'll tell you a story. The story of how EDP repositioned its business and the brand strategy during 2021. As you know, the world has changed and we face unprecedented challenges. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are now reaching the highest peak in 650,000 years. We have gone through experience that have shown us that the planet is calling us and no one can sit back and wait. If nothing is done, global temperature will increase by 4 degrees, impacting our lives and the lives of our children. More than 600 cities will be threatened already at the end of this century by the rise in sea level. To address these challenges, we need to strengthen our commitments with the planet and with decarbonization. And EDP is stepping up the challenge. In January 2001, we saw the appointment of a new CEO and management team. The new CEO updated the business strategy with an enhanced ambition. Let me show our business strategy. So we are doing this by setting ambitious goals for this next strategic cycle, reinforcing our positioning as leaders of a fair and inclusive energy transition. That's why early this year, we announced to the market a bold and ambitious plan that comes with an ambition to become coal-free by 2025, just in 4 years, reinforcing an accelerated path towards decarbonization, and the anticipation by 20 years of our goal to be 100% green, which means that by the end of this decade, we only produce energy from the power of the wind, the sun, and the water. Our ambition is to be all green, but our brand positioning also needs to be aligned with this goal. So we are also stepping up on the way we present ourselves and communicate externally. So as you can see, this is our official corporate logo since 2011 that can still be seen on our physical assets, such as stores, corporate buildings, official documents, groups, fleet, sponsorships. And as you can see, the main colors are red and black, which are not fully aligned with the sustainability values EDP wants to transmit. Therefore, we implemented a few adjustments. First, leaving red behind. We started to use more the monogram version of the logo to reinforce a clear and up-to-date brand positioning, mainly through communication assets such as external and internal campaigns, events, and website. More recently, and to strengthen our green strategy, we started to apply the white version of the monogram on green backgrounds through social media. And this is just a start. Now it's time to tell you how our brand started to embody EDP's strategic goals and business narrative, our story, a story that starts with this new signature, Changing Tomorrow Now, a signature that is in English because we are a global company now present in more than 20 countries. It's a global claim to unite and embody this message across borders. Is born from our strategic plan, where we said EDP will harness the wind, the sun, and the water to become 100% green by 2030 and accelerate our efforts across all ESG dimensions for superior long-term value creation, with a clear meaning: changing because we are pioneers and delivers, tomorrow because we work to build a sustainable future, and now because it's urgent to anticipate the targets. Let me show you.
Today is the first day of what yesterday we called the future. It's inevitable. And like the future, unpredictable, unstoppable. But there is one thing that we know: we're changing it now. Taking action to build the tomorrow we want. A new energy on the planet. More inclusive, shared, greener. It's in our hands. You can only change the world if you can change yourself. If you can find the will, the know, and the how. Because that's our story. To always discover a new ambition. EDP is using the power of wind, sun, and water to be 100% green and to support those who today are already changing tomorrow. EDP, changing tomorrow now.
So we are not telling our story alone, and it is embodied by a set of creative and business projects. First of all, let me present you the EDP Atlantic mission with Francisco Lufinha. Let me give you a quick glimpse on this. So, powered by the energy of the wind, the Portuguese kite surfer will cross the Atlantic solo on a kite boat. Francisco, who is already a world record holder, has the ambition to break another record by completing this mission and to raise public awareness to ocean conservation and the power of renewable energy sources. Lufinha's audacity and ambition also remind us of the path that EDP has taken across borders, one that has made us truly global company, albeit our Portuguese DNA. From wind, the story then moves to water. Water was one of the first elements to mark the history of EDP. And in terms of communication, we saw the opportunity to use this element to link our tradition with our commitment to future generations through the creation of EDP Surf for Tomorrow, a mentoring program for young athletes in a water sport we have been endorsing for several years and is quite popular in Portugal, which is surf. With the aim to place more and more athletes in the elite of the world surfing, EDP will help 5 young athletes from Portugal and Spain live an intensive surf training program with trained professionals that will prepare them for an opportunity to participate in national and international junior competitions. We also have Carolina Piteira in this journey. Carolina is a young Portuguese artist, internationally recognized for her work. She has been chosen to become the voice that will tell our story, and it is campaign to paint that story in a set of canvases that will then be exhibited at the Central Tejo here in Lisbon through the name of EDP Changing Tomorrow Now exhibition. We have already seen projects that represented the energy of the wind and the water. What about the sun? So the power of the sun will be represented by the launch of an Iberian project, EDP Inclusive Solar Communities, that aim to bring the power of the sun to all for a more inclusive energy transition. EDP will install solar panels in private solidarity organizations so that these institutions can produce and consume their own energy. Where technically possible, these organizations will become local energy communities, and EDP will make sure that the energy produced by the institution can power at no cost vulnerable families living in the neighborhood. In this way, EDP will be promoting the use of solar energy and making sure that it reaches those who would have a more difficult access to it. Finally, because talking about a greener future means fully embracing decarbonization, Changing Tomorrow Now will collaborate with the artist Vils to create the EDP Art Reef. Many of you will have heard about Alexandra's Fatos or Vils, artistic interventions that mark several cities around the world, from Lisbon to London, Moscow, New York, Los Angeles, and several others. Now this artist will give a new life to parts of the decommissioned EDP power plants, which will then be submerged, creating a new marine ecosystem, a project I'm sure you will also be excited to follow. Next year, when you come to Portugal, make sure to visit the Art Reef if you are a diver, of course. Now I'll show you two quick videos, one about Francisco Lufinha and the project EDP Atlantic Mission, and another about our team of surfers, the project of EDP Surf for Tomorrow.
I live the adrenaline, the challenge, but also to raise awareness and inspire others to protect our oceans. Now I'm taking the need for a greater environmental awareness further, through the power of natural and renewable resources. Yes, I'm harnessing the power of wind with my kite, of course, but also the energy from the sun and the power of moving water. Did you know Portugal is 97% water? And I've connected it all on a kite surf. It's time to change towards sustainable energy. If I can make it in these extreme conditions, then we all can.
What kind of energy do you need to reach the top? To harness your greatness, to overcome adversity, to inspire others. Follow an elite team of junior surfers on an enduring journey to reach their full potential to become the next generation of pro surfers and leave their mark on the world. Dive into a world-class training program designed to fight their fears and improve their strengths. Some will stumble, some will fall short, and others will rise above. EDP, Surf for Tomorrow, the documentary.
So we'll make this team grow, bringing this project to Brazil and adding 2 Brazilian athletes very soon. So just as important as delivering on, our ambition is to share it with everyone and making sure all stakeholders and our people understand, support, and are inspired by our vision to strengthen our objectives to become one company, one brand, and one culture, continuously keep to lead on energy transition while addressing innovation, sustainability, and social impact. We are also inviting everyone across the globe to act now for the future of our planet and for generations to come. We'll keep endorsing projects that help us tell our story and spread our Changing Tomorrow Now narrative across the globe. Expect to hear from us very soon. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen, okay, Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, Catarina. Really very interesting case study. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it answers or speaks to, doesn't it, one of our 10 key areas of action, which was the purpose-driven marketing that we found that was coming out of our Agenda 21 outcomes. And I think it'll be quite fascinating to see if that continues through to our 22. I suspect we may see some of these areas actually being accelerated or highlighted yet further with stronger actions behind them in the 22 agenda. So thank you for now. Just a reminder to our participants, we would clearly encourage you to ask questions of Catarina and our other speakers, and we're going to ask you to put your questions into the chat box, please, and then at the end of the presentations we'll have a plenary and a roundtable discussion about that. Next on my list, it's a pleasure to introduce and to ask my friend Gemma Butler from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, if I could only say it, to speak about sustainability in marketing, yet another one of the areas that were key areas for action in the Agenda 2021. Gemma.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me today. I think it's fair to say, as I think has been mentioned numerous times, that we're facing some of the biggest challenges of our time, and these challenges aren't new. They have been around. We have known about them for a number of years. However, they've reached a size and level of urgency that we can no longer ignore. And with each one, there seems to be a very much an important role that marketing and marketers need to play in either addressing, communicating, or thinking about different ways and solutions and innovations on how we can tackle these huge challenges that we face, and play to our skill sets. And sustainability is no different. So sustainability was unsurprisingly identified as one of the key issues on the Agenda 2021 report from the EMC across Europe by CMOs last year. And not only is it the biggest challenge that we face as humanity today, it has also no doubt accelerated, and businesses have been placed firmly at the center of it as the catalyst for driving change. Now, sustainability is complex, and I'm not going to go through all of the various elements on this slide, but I think this really does give an overview of the sheer breadth and complexity of the challenge. And we know it will require action from world leaders, governments who just had COP26, businesses of all type, and society if we are to meet the targets that have clearly been set out. However, amongst this collective effort, business, as I said, is being put firmly at the center in order to drive change and being seen as the leaders of change. So what has changed over the last 2 years? Well, first of all, there has been a significant shift in power for the stakeholder chain. It's no longer all about shareholders. In fact, any of you that are familiar with Edelman's Trust Barometer, that is highlighted last year, the 2021 Trust Barometer, that employees are now the most important stakeholder group, more than 3 times higher than shareholders. And this is really important because this is why diversity and inclusion, which is what Claire is going to talk about, is so critical to progress and ensure that we do make progress and we do take action and we do implement change where it's needed. Also, you have consumers. Consumers now want to engage with more sustainable brands, which is hugely positive. But this is not just about simply selling products that are more environmentally responsible. There is an urgent need for us to change the behaviours that marketing has effectively shaped and break our unhealthy relationship with consumption. And then there are the investors. More and more investors want to see sustainable development plans before investing. And this is where, sadly, businesses take the most notice because money talks. And I recently interviewed the CEO for the UK Sustainable Investment and Finance Association for my podcast. And he spoke about how there is much more understanding by investors now on what sustainable business looks like. And through their position of active ownership, they're asking to see climate plans, they're asking to see climate targets, they're asking to see equality and diversity plans, and they're asking to see pollution and water plans to make sure that the businesses they are investing in are adding value for the longer term and looking at the longer term strategy. And that's really, really important as we move forward, because all of these stakeholders now have a really, really important part to play. So what's marketing's role in all of this, and why is it so important that we use our skills and powers for good? Well, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, marketing has played a significant role in getting us to where we are today in terms of the issue. We have driven consumption levels to an all-time high, leaving behind us some unmanageable levels of waste. We've shaped societal behaviours. We've made shopper journeys easier. That's our role. And we've also, spent a long time trying to remove any friction and make purchasing of our products and services more efficient than it's ever been. And for a long time, marketing has been seen as the function that sits at the end of the funnel, the end of the business funnel, advertising and selling people stuff. But that has to change. We know, and certainly at CIM we know, and Jonathan knows this well from his days at CIM, that marketing is so much more than campaigns and slogans. And now is the time for marketing to rise to the challenge. And we have to use our skills, and as I say here, our powers for good. We have to shape new behaviours. As I said, we've shaped the behaviours where we're driving consumption and we're driving, levels of waste. We need to use social marketing. If you think about what marketing has done for smoking and what marketing has done for obesity, we need to use those same skills to break our unhealthy relationship with consumption. We need to create new ways of working and new ways of thinking, all the innovation and ideas that come out of marketing. We need to really champion things like the circular economy, which is a real critical and key part. And we need to use our voice and our reach to educate, inspire hope, and change behaviours. And we need to get back to the heart of what marketing is, which is about rethinking our approach with a more sustainable lens. And we need to deliver what customers, employees, and society want. And as I mentioned earlier, the stakeholder chain has changed, and they do want to engage with organisations that have much more of a focus on the environment and how it's more about people, profit, and planet. Now, I believe sustainability is actually going to accelerate and act as a catalyst for changing conversations, for changing relationships within organisations, and really take marketing back to the core of what it is. So where does sustainable marketing impact? Well, in 2020, we saw marketing's position elevate across the world, where organisations turned to marketing when they realised the importance of brand strategy and communication. CIM's own CMO 50 report and the inaugural edition of the CMO survey, which was a UK pilot ran off the back of a very well-established and well-respected US report, both highlighted that marketing leaders had fed back that the role of marketing had increased significantly in importance over the year of the pandemic. Sustainability is also acting, as I said, as a catalyst for change, because marketing ultimately are the custodians of brand, and sustainability gives marketers the opportunity to champion getting back to the core of that brand, exploring, uncovering and sharing not only what your brand does, but where it can make a difference. Why a brand exists is more important now than ever before, and it has to go beyond your products and services and include well-being for all and a societal commitment. Everything we do goes back to trust and purpose. And this is the same for ED&I as well, which Claire will talk about more, and about driving culture. You know, marketing with its knowledge of customers, markets, behaviors, and having access to more information and data than we've ever had are centrally positioned to feed back into organizational strategy. And we really need to focus on the triple bottom line, which is people, profit, and planet, because it can't just be about profits anymore. Marketing needs to build that business case for change. And with investors now wanting to see brands, sustainable development plans and actions, and sustainable finance is really a term that sits alongside sustainable marketing, then that relationship between marketing and finance now has to get better. And marketing can't just be seen as, you know, the department that spends the money. And then finally, we've got communication, which is what we do in marketing, isn't it? You know, we share stories, we raise awareness, we inform people, and we generate conversations. However, we do need to be aware of greenwashing, and we do need to be aware of purpose washing. And this is something that's being called out across social media, as I'm sure you'll have all seen, across the media, and also across governments. You know, regulation is now coming through. In the UK, the Green Claims Code has just been announced, which is the Competition Markets Authority are launching this new regulation from January 2022. And that will see legal action being taken against organizations. So, you know, with that coming, marketers have to be more aware than ever before of what's happening. And then there is the importance of internal communications. Don't forget the importance of communicating within your organizations. Again, marketing as a function should be across all different parts of your organization, sharing as much internally as we do externally. You know, purpose, objectives, progress need to be shared and bought in by everyone, because again, back to the stakeholder chain, employees are the most important part of that stakeholder chain, and having a diverse number of people within your organization will enable a more consistent and collaborative understanding. It will drive and implement change faster if you communicate effectively internally. You'll be able to educate and mobilize everyone within the organization, and you'll really get an understanding of what your employees want. But also it allows employees to align their values and vice versa. You know, many employees are now looking at their own values and applying those to the organizations they want to work to. And it takes purpose beyond the products and the campaigns and the advertising. I read a piece of research last year which said that, you know, whilst 76% of marketers believe their organization has a purpose, only 10% believe it actually goes beyond the products and services, which means ultimately it's not doing the bigger objective that it needs to do, which is help with people and planet. And all of this allows you to work out your own organizational impacts as well. So in closing, where do you even start with this as an organization? Where do you start with this as a business owner? Where do you start with this as a marketer? And I think one word, education. I mean, knowledge and awareness of what is happening out there in relation to the sustainability challenge. As marketers, we have to step outside and start to understand some of these things. And I'm not saying you need to be sustainability experts, but, you know, at least be aware of the sustainable development goals. Personally, I think as marketers, goal number 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities, and goal number 12, which is about responsible production and consumption, should be as a bare minimum on every single business's strategy and on every single marketer's radar. because that is what we do. We are all about production and consumption, and we have to break this unhealthy relationship we have with it currently. Then once you have an understanding of that and a knowledge of that, look to things like the Paris Climate Agreement. What is ESG? The circular economy, which is opening up all sorts of innovation. There's the B Corp movement, which is, which is global and it started in America, and a lot of organizations, certainly in the UK, are signing up to that. And then there is really taking that learning, because once you start to see these things, you can't unsee them. 2 years ago, I started researching for the book that I co-authored called Sustainable Marketing: How to Drive Profits with Purpose. And it wasn't until I started researching all of the things that you see on this slide that I really realized that, these factors are now driven into many of the decisions I make as a marketer and many of the decisions my department makes as marketers. So once you have that understanding, you can apply that sustainable lens. And there's also a lot of information out there that can support you as well. I've just put a link up here to CIM's new Sustainable Transformation Hub, and on there you'll find content and courses. And we've also just started developing a qualification at CIM, so we'll be launching a diploma in sustainable marketing, because we really believe that education is key to actually driving action and progress, but also inspiring the next generation of marketers to come through with that knowledge of what their role is. And then there's a link to some of the other work I do. So I have a podcast series called Can Marketing Save the Planet? And within this, we speak to an amazing range of guests on a wide range of subjects, all sharing and advising on the things that marketers need to know. I think the marketing really does need to take the lead and is central to the change, given what we do. And we really need to turn to our skill sets and see how we can use our powers for good. Thank you very much.
Gemma, thank you so much. Thank you for your insight. I think it's just interesting in passing, before we come to Claire, just to say that in recent times, the last maybe year and a half with my postgraduate students, it is quite interesting to see how the attitude towards brand development around sustainability has really changed. And credit to you, and this is an unashamed promotion for your book. Credit to you for writing what I think is probably the finest textbook currently available for anyone looking to develop a brand strategy around sustainability. I'm sure we will perhaps come back to that during our plenary in a short while. So we've looked at brand strategy, which was part of that purpose-driven marketing, one of our key areas of action from the 21 agenda. We've looked at sustainability, sustainable marketing. And now I think with the help of Claire Kemsley from Hays Marketing, Claire is managing director at Hays, we are going to look at equity, diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and from no doubt a marketer's perspective. Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much, Jenna and Catarina. Super interesting dialogue and interesting thoughts that we all need to percolate on, I guess, in the world of marketing today. And just referring back to your 10 points on the agenda for action, Jonathan, really, we've talked about sustainability today, we've talked about creative leadership and purpose. Really, none of this can exist without genuine ED&I. So 2020 saw ED&I rise at the priority list, as we've talked about with sense of purpose and with sustainable marketing over the last 2 years. Big conversations are being had across the globe, and throughout the EMC marketing agenda, which you referred to, Jonathan, in 2021, there were numerous challenges highlighted, such as employer branding, new working structures, culture, and inclusive leadership. Management and diversity all fall under ED&I. Organisations honestly need to listen and take action if progress is going to be made. And just like sustainability, data privacy and regulation, businesses need to be seen to be acting on ED&I, not just giving it lip service.
Claire, if I can just interrupt you, sorry to interrupt. It may be me, but I suspect not, because I think I've just got some messages coming in on the chat box. The sound quality is very poor at the moment. Is there any way we can clean that up at all?
Is that better?
Whatever you did, if you could do a little bit more of that, it would be really good.
Is that better?
That's really clear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. So each year, there are key days and campaigns such as National Inclusion Week. In the UK, we have Black History Month, International Women's Day, and Pride, and a host of others. Individuals and organisations given an opportunity to demonstrate their support and prompt discussion around major ED&I considerations. But we need to challenge ourselves whether all that talk is accompanied by ever-growing awareness and action. In this latest edition of our annual report, which I'm delighted to share with you today, we look at really, is the talk leading to action, and is it really making a great difference to individual and brands? To put together a report, we did the research back in July, August, September of this year. So if I can just share a little bit of data with you. Across the UK, overall, employers were more confident, 55%, that their ED&I talk translates into real action for their employees. The employees though, only 44% felt the same. So this 48% that disagree is disappointing. Less than half of all the people who spoke to marketing believe that real action is taking place. Against the context where the benefits of ED&I at an individual and an organisational brand level are increasingly clear and understood, 62% of marketing, PR and comms professionals say their employer talks about the importance of ED&I in their workplace, but only a third believe their employer combines discussion with notable action. So in short, the amount of talk is not being matched by action. Without talk of equity, diversion and inclusion rings hollow. Without action, a lack of action may even draw assumptions of indifference on the part of an organisation to improve ED&I. And if we recall some of Gemma's comments earlier, individuals, marketers, comms individuals are looking to work with a brand with a sense of purpose and sustainability, but none of that is going to ensure and be possible without genuine ED&I in the workplace. So what groups do you feel that equal opportunity is possible? We did some more research and looked actually at some more data around those individuals. This is a very disappointing slide. I have run several round tables with key decision makers in global businesses over the last 3 months, and we don't have time today, but this slide we could talk about for a very long time. These groups do not feel they have an equal opportunity to succeed. Looking at the full survey results, when asked to consider their own organisation, our respondents felt these following groups did not have an equal opportunity to succeed. 43% from a different ethnic background, 34% of women, over a third over the age of 50, and nearly a quarter of those with a disability. These were the overall results. But if we look more closely, how do marketers feel? How do marketers and communications experts feel about their opportunity to succeed? Under half of marketing, PR and comms professionals overall do not believe people from all backgrounds will have an equal opportunity to succeed in their organisation. Close to half believe there will be equal opportunity in 5 years or beyond, whilst only 9% believe this will happen within the next 5 years. Marketeers, disappointingly, continue to see a lack of diverse representation in the marketing profession itself, let alone the brands and organisations they work with. So how do we move from lip service to action? It isn't easy. We know it's difficult, it's complex, and sometimes I believe there is a fear that we may do it wrong. I believe in the research we've taken, conversations we've had with key decision makers in the marketing fraternity, it is better to try, to maybe do it wrong, but to try.
Claire, I'm going to have to, sorry, Claire, I'm going to have to interrupt you again. Participants are still finding it very difficult to hear what you're saying. Gemma suggests maybe if you removed your headset, it might be clearer. can you go to the microphone on your machine if you have one?
Is that better?
That's pretty good, I think.
I'm sorry, we have a connection problem, I think. Is that better?
No, that's crystal clear now. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So what are the challenges which may be preventing us from moving from lip service to action? What do employers feel? What's their perspective? The biggest challenge that employers across a range of professions expect to face when looking to turn ED&I from this talking space into positive action, interestingly, is overcoming resistance to change within their own organisations. Other challenges, as you can see, include employee engagement at just under 50%. The action required not being considered a business priority. And again, referring back to Gemma and Catarina's presentations and conversations, how can we not believe that ED&I is a business priority? And how can we not be placing enough resource to deliver the action our brand and our businesses need? Brands need to ensure they have an inclusive culture which internally and externally embraces diversity and challenges bias every day. It's widely reported in previous reports that we can share data with at another time that there's a lack of diverse representation in the marketing profession, particularly in the C-suite. It's a real issue. Marketers are truly cross-functional within an organisation, and they need to use their relationship building skills and communicate effectively to help shape and drive the culture of the business, to raise awareness, to build trust, ensure engagement, and drive the right behaviours amongst their employees. So how do we feel as marketers in communication from an employee perspective? We want our training for our managers and ourselves to be greater and invested in. We really want the organisation's ability to attract and recruit from those particular minority groups that feel they don't have the opportunity to succeed. And if I can remind ourselves about the data on that very second slide we looked at, you know, those over 50, women, those from ethnic minorities, our voice from a marketing and commerce perspective is very strong. And we are saying we do want our organisation to look at how we recruit, how do we attract those people in our organisation, which we know will ostensibly have a brilliant impact on our brand internally and externally. And to work with other organisations to recruit from a diverse talent pool, there are so many organisations out there we can ask for support. We at Hayes, we're a global organisation, as you know, we've just started working with BYP, Black Youth Professionals, because we are very aware that we need to be reaching the BAME community in a wider sphere across the world. They are hugely supportive, and we're learning with them as we go along. Marketing has a role. Marketers, as Gemma said, have had their voice amplified. A lot of organisations I deal with, I would say marketing has been catapulted into the boardroom in the last 18 months. We now have a moment to navigate this challenging environment. Marketing's got a frontline role and is responsible in some ways, I could argue, like on many big issues, as being the function that guides the brand. They work for the brand to ensure that what goes out doesn't miss the mark, offend, but is informed. And Gemma touched on the CIM Chief Marketing Officer 50 report that highlights actually that externally we are custodians of the brand, and therefore reputationally, when we're raising awareness of high profile societal issues back into their organisations so we can make informed choices. We need to make sure that the image that our campaigns project is reflected of the society we live in. Everything, frankly, ladders back up to purpose. We have some recommendations, and you're welcome to have the full suite of slides here, which have some further detail on the slide deck. But from an employer perspective, so from a marketing comms key decision maker, looking at my own team, looking at my own brand, I need to get a better understanding of data. And I need to communicate what I'm doing in my brand if I am doing good work within ED&I. We need to expand and promote our flexible working opportunities so we can reach some of those minority groups that feel they are unable to bring their whole selves to work in an environment and in a brand they choose to work with. We must support our team with training, and we mustn't shy away from getting expert help when we need to. There is so much more out there to talk about today. And actually, from an individual perspective, from a personal ownership perspective, we need to be comfortable sharing our data. Maybe that's an interview, maybe that's looking at our team, maybe that's doing internal pulse surveys, which we've started doing internally in Hayes across the globe. We need to show our employer that we do trust them. We need to feel that value. We need to be comfortable sharing who we are. But equally, we need to speak up and get involved. And as Gemma talked about in her sustainable marketing, and Catarina alluded, that sense of purpose, that sense of change, we need to speak up as individuals. We need to belong to the networks. We need to become allies within our organisations to those parts of the organisation that are trying to do the best they can to improve the ED&I as a whole, as a business. But individually, we can make a huge difference. I'm an ally to our Pride network in Hayes, for example, and I'm on a committee that's talking openly about the menopause in business. Every small action you individually take opens up the possibility for change. We also need to question our attitudes towards ED&I during our own job search, as much as we would wanting to consider working for a sustainable organisation, an organisation that has a sense of purpose, an organisation that wants to make a difference. Are they really looking at ED&I? Are they really trying to embrace everything that will ultimately build a brand that is genuinely authentic and genuinely can walk and talk and not just give lip service to ED&I? Thank you, and I apologise for the sound.
I think we got the majority of the message, Claire. So thank you for that, and thank you for saying that we can share the slide deck as well. I think that would be really useful. But having said that, there were some sound issues, and I think it sounded like connection issues to me. Certainly some very hard-hitting, powerful comments there within your talk. And your presentation. So, Sandra, if we can go back to our screen. There we go. Okay, so I'll just open up the chat box. Time now, and if Gemma and Catarina and Claire, if you'd like to come on to screen with me, that would be fantastic. Let's open this up then. Let's open up our discussion today to our audience, to our participants. The three of you covered interlocking areas, and that I think was one of the key outcomes from last year's European Marketing Agenda survey, where those 10 things that I ran through earlier on don't sit in isolation. They are intertwined. They are related so much to each other. So we had the customer experience, we had the purpose-driven marketing, CRM, sustainable marketing, return on marketing investments, organizational change, including D&I, direct-to-consumer strategies, MarTech, creative leadership, data management. They're all interrelated. And thank you so much for your presentations, because I think that really came across very strongly that there's a relationship, an interrelationship amongst these things. So let me start by asking you as a panel about the changes that may have happened. I'm not going to try and make this a biased comment, but have you seen in your practice and in your experiences, have we seen an acceleration of change in these areas over the last year? And do you sense that that's going to be accelerated for marketers to have that problem of managing that into the near future?
I think absolutely there's been an acceleration across all of these large challenges, either because of time or because of society not going to put up with it anymore, and using their voices. So absolutely, and I think for marketing, from my perspective, the reason marketing is got such a large role to play is because we are involved in the communications, aren't we? We are the custodians of the brand. We protect our brand reputation, but also, as I said, we we put the communications out there, and David Attenborough himself said, you know, that the sustainability challenge is now a communications challenge. And I think if we apply some of that to what we saw as communications coming out during the pandemic, it really did highlight the fact when you get the communications wrong, then a lot of stuff can go wrong off the back of it. So I think marketing role and marketer skill sets are what we require, because I believe we've lost a lot of the soft skills, and I don't like calling them that, but you know, communication skills really, really do need to be pulled to the front of what people do and how they communicate with each other.
So do you think then, Gemma, just as a follow-up question to that, do you think that we have become as a profession slightly seduced by data rather than the ability to have those soft skills, as you said?
I think we've been sort of seduced by the what. So we look at the what all the time, but we don't look at why, and we don't, you know, and there's just been this ongoing sort of progressive ramp up of just selling, consumption. And then we look at how do people consume, and let's take away the friction here, and let's do next day delivery, and let's give free returns, and let's do everything we can to just drive that profit. And I think that has to fundamentally change now, and we have to look at how we've shaped behaviors. And I always use the example of smoking, where we would effectively, you know, we sold people cigarettes through advertising when smoking was cool, and we didn't know the dangers of the health. And then we've moved to a more social marketing, where now, you know, certainly in the UK, cigarettes aren't even on the shelves anymore, you know. And I think that's a real prime example of what we need to do as businesses now. Not only think about the products that we sell and how we can make them better and more environmentally responsible, but the behaviors that we want society to have, that, you know, in dealing with business. And I think business probably needs to look at what its role is as well in society now.
Yeah. Catarina, you know, your presentation, your case study around how your organization, I guess has, I mean, have they refocused around that concept of a purpose-driven marketing brand strategy? Is you know, and because I'm interested to know where that came from. What was the push to change to become that purpose-driven kind of organization? Where did that come from?
Well, when we updated our business strategy in the beginning of January, that came with the appointment of the new CEO and a new management team. So we decided that it was obvious to us that we should align our communication, marketing communication, and brand communication with the business strategy. And the business strategy is very clear on our goals. So we're going to be all green by 2030. So that's why we are looking at our logo right now that doesn't convey our, you know, all green strategy anymore. And even the project and all our sponsorship strategy, we need to align that with all these movement that we are doing in the business, because it's a movement in the business and the brand has to be aligned, and our culture needs to be aligned. So there's a lot of things going on with EDP right now. We are a global company, more and more global. We have a lot of business around the globe, so we need to bring all that together in one narrative. And so we need to be coherent, one culture, one brand, and one narrative. And of course, our business as an utility business, I mean, the main goal, I think, that we've been seeing in all these conferences, COP26 was really clear. The electrification of the economy is completely, it's the main focus to reach the environmental goals that we need. So we as an electrical company, we have our main focus is that. So by anticipating the European goals on 20 years, so instead of 2050, we are going to be all green by 2030. This is a path that EDP has been building over the ages, because we've been really strong in the renewables. So we don't need to do a big shift in our business. We just invest more on the renewable side. And so, yes, so for us, it's clear that the brand needs to align this. It's all these purpose-driven. We have a lot of projects on social impact. We don't want to leave anyone behind on this energy transition to all green. So this is very clear to us. So yes, we are a purpose-driven company, and our communication is going to be all that from now on.
I find it quite interesting that you say that you had a new CEO come in who gave this a push, and I think that's quite interesting because very often it is about a personal change, isn't it? It's a change within the management, CEO or otherwise, that gives the impetus for us to perhaps reevaluate our strategy. Here in the university, for instance, we've done something somewhat similar. We've had a new, in the last 2 years, a new head of marketing has come in, and that person has really acted as an influencer on all things that we do around our marketing and brand strategy. So I find that quite interesting from your perspective too. From big
well, it's a path that we've been, prior to this CEO, it's a path that EDP has been doing. But the moment when we presented to the market the business update, that was the moment that EDP realized that, of course, we needed to be more aligned in the way we communicate, and our brand needs to convey the attributes and what we are now. So I think was the whole context, not only the CEO, but the new management team and the path that TDP has been doing over the years. And of course, when the time starts to move very fast, and sometimes I think companies need to stop and look at this, at the brand. And I think what happened is that maybe COVID helped, and all this change that happened in our lives help us to stop and focus on the brand strategy and look at it with the different eyes and align that with the business strategy. That's all we're doing.
I'm absolutely sure you're right that COVID made a good number of us stop and take account of what we were doing, how we were doing it, and it's also, of course, changed the way that we do business, forever, really, hasn't it? I'm fond of using a quote from Lenin, who said, sometimes it takes 20 years to change 2 years, and I think we've seen 20-year change in 2 years. We've accelerated forward. Claire, again, fascinating set of slides from yourself about diversity and inclusion and equality, and I sense, just speaking to people here in Wales, organizations here in Wales, that there is an absolute war for talent at the moment. Talent is such a scarce resource, and yet there are still issues with diversity and inclusion within companies. Are you finding that on a kind of more global kind of scale?
I think there are two things. I think in marketing, as I say, I think following on from Gemma's statement, have definitely catapulted into the boardroom, the committee room, or a public service organisation or a global business, which is great because it's where it should be, at the heart of every business. But I think there are two challenges. One is that, to your statement, business has changed forever. It's really interesting how many organisations are now beginning to request that their employees return on a 5-day basis. I'm super surprised it's happened so quickly. So two things are generated from that. One is that instantly maybe excludes some of the sectors of the workplace that we've been talking about, because there are challenges around people potentially being in an office 5 days a week. And equally, the point about the skill shortages, yes, there is a huge skill shortage. The biggest skill shortage at the moment in marketing is data and analytics. And it's interesting because, again, you have touched on that point about, have we been a bit blinded by the data? The challenge we have is we have the data, we don't have the insights. And the ability to find the insights from the data is going to improve your customer experience. It's going to improve, I believe, the authenticity of your brand. And so that in itself is a challenge. There is a shortage of those skill sets. And as IBM said 6 months ago, you know, most businesses went into a sort of hyper digitalization phase in the last 18 months. They thought they heard the voice of the customer, they thought they were doing the right things with the data, but it transpired they weren't really hearing the voice and they weren't able to respond to that customer need. So it's a very complex place at the moment, as Gemma and I often speak on our conversations. There's not one or two things, it's thrown all of it into the mix really. But yes, there's a skill shortage. Data analytics is the technical skill in short supply. But as Gemma touched on, the soft skills, which Gemma and I both don't like that word, but communications is right at the top. We can't, there is such a need for great communicators in marketing, but it's never more so than now. And that is fundamentally because of the way we are interacting, I suppose, with each other as consumers, as fellow beings, and as customers and representatives of brands. So communication skills. And the other skill set that's very difficult to find at the moment is the ability to actually adopt change in marketing. We've all had to adapt, as Catarina alluded to, we've all had to adapt hugely in the way we work in the last 18 months, but that doesn't necessarily mean we've adopted change. So I think particularly in the marketing and comms arena, we have to think about if we have had to adapt, have we really adopted that change, and is it for the good of our business? Because when we look at some of the data on Media and I, we are falling back year on year in lots of those areas. And that data is so disappointing. And we've had, as I said, many round tables, Jonathan, with very senior marketing directors being very open about how externally they are focused on Media and I, but actually internally as a brand, they're probably not. And if you think about how we feel as individuals, you know, we are finding it difficult to place the great talent in some of those businesses because they genuinely want to see an authentic investment in not just sustainability or a sense of purpose, but equally ED&I.
Yeah, interesting comments. Your sound quality has not improved, I have to say. So
I do apologise.
No, it's great. Actually, it's great when you're speaking much closer to the microphone. Let's go back through the speakers then and ask you a simple question, which it will no doubt be quite tricky to answer. And just a reminder to participants, you can put your questions please into the chat box if you'd like to ask anything specific of our panelists. But let's go to you again, Gemma. The simple question for you all is, you've got online today, we've got senior marketers, CMOs from across Europe representing probably nearly every type of organization going, I would imagine. In simple terms, so from you, Gemma, how would what would you say to a CMO who's looking to become more sustainable in what they do? What would you advise them to do first? And to move towards being a sustainable organization?
I think first piece of advice is don't try and tackle it all because it's so vast. You'll just probably end up running from the building or wherever you are. Really focus on it in terms of tackling one thing at a time and actually making progress and having plans. I think another thing in relation to sustainability, as I said in the presentation, is having an understanding and awareness of the broader picture and what's happening out there. I think that's absolutely critical. And then, we in a lot of the talks I do, we talk about the importance of sustainability being led from the top. I mean, if it's not led by if your senior leadership team aren't bought into it, then it's going to be, a real struggle. I mean, I've had numerous conversations with organizations where actually employees themselves have really driven that conversation up through to the leadership team, but it really does need the leadership team to embrace it in order to make change happen, quite frankly. So I think, yeah, don't take it all on at once because it's too big. Lead from the top. And understand it. Take some time to really understand, not be an expert on it, just understand what's going on out there. I mean, you can't get away from it, let's face it, in the news and across social media. So there's no excuse for not knowing that it's happening.
Claire, ED&I, how are we going to, what would you advise organizations to do to implement better strategies around that?
It's a bit following on generally, it's where do you start? Because you can do lots and lots of initiatives, that end up being just lip service. So I would say that you need to understand your current data, you need to understand your current mix. If you, unless you can understand the diversity profile and the sentiment of your current employees, you don't actually know where your challenges are. So I think encouraging your current employees to feel confident and with enough trust and value to share their data, their own personal data, and capture that anonymously, then you can start to have a bit more of a lens on where your challenges might be. The perception of ED&I challenges are often wrong. There's often organisations that are doing a lot more in a much more positive way, but they don't communicate it, for example, with their employees. So their employees don't know what's happening. So I would say from an employer and employer perspective, try and encourage your current employees to share with them so you can have a picture of your diversity, a genuine feel for the sentiment of your current business internally, and then look at how we can influence that for the positive change.
Thank you. Catarina, I'm in an organization. How am I going to change my brand? What should I do?
Well, first, it has to be a collaborative process. It should be top-down, of course, the initiative of doing it, but then you have to hear the organization and then make strategic people to be engaged in this process, people that they will advocate what you want to your brand to convey. I agree in the sense that you shouldn't tackle it all in suddenly. First, you need to your business has to have specific goals on sustainability. You have to do something and then communicate about it. It shouldn't be the other way around, otherwise you are just a greenwasher. So first align your business in sustainability with clear measures, and then start to communicate. And I think it always works better inside out when you have your people engaged, your culture engaged and aligned, and then start putting the message out. But first, have your business and your people with you together with clear measures and clear behaviors that people should follow and advocate. And then after you have that, you can start communicating to the exterior.
Yeah. Good. I've over the years done some interesting work around this concept of firms of endearment. Where firms become less traditionally focused around profit making and more about profit sharing. And I think this in all three presentations today, I think I certainly heard a lot of the phrases and comments that I would expect to find in the work around firms of endearment. So I would no doubt persuade everybody to go take a look at the work around firms of endearment. We have a question from Chris Daly from the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Chris, because we don't have a rush of questions, I don't know whether you'd like to just pop up on screen and ask the question personally rather than me reading it out.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, first of all, just to say many thanks to all the speakers. I thought it was really interesting. It made it clear that change is the number one on the agenda. And ultimately, I'm always sort of, why is this time different? I think Gemma touched on that earlier on in one of her earlier answers. But I was thinking, is more regulation inevitable to try and make sure that this change actually happens this time around, even though we can see the consequences of it not happening already in front of us? And the second part is about how important it is for the various governments. We have lots of different countries on the call. How is it important for the various governments to provide that leadership, or will it rely on business and marketing to provide that leadership for them? I thought that was, Catarina, I thought your presentation was amazing. I mean, gosh, when you see such professionalism and such ambition, you think, gosh, in business you trust that will happen, whereas I'm not sure whether that trust is in. I don't know how other governments are handling this desire for change or need for change.
So, Catarina, let's come to you, as Chris mentioned you. is more regulation inevitable to try and make sure that this change will happen? Are we going to be pushed by regulation, or are we going to be pushed by governmental action? Or is it actually, are we going to be pushed by those people that we used to call customers?
I think the three of them. I think it has to be a collective movement. No, really, because if customers won't do it by themselves, I mean, customers will push the organizations to do it, but then we need regulation, and we need, we need organizations to look at it seriously. And I think what comes out COP26, I think COP26 at least help us to put the issue on the table and discuss it seriously. And you saw all the manifestations and all the crowds on the street pushing governments, companies, and customers to do things. I think it should be, I think it has to be an integrated movement when everybody pushes the world to change. And of course, there's companies like mine, like EDP, that have more responsibility because we are on the electrical sector. So we need to electrify the company. So we need to be the ones setting up the challenge, pushing the boundaries and walking the talk then. So that's I think, us as an utility, as an electrical, we have a real big responsibility. So I'm really proud to work in a company that realized that and push the boundaries and set up really ambitious targets business-wise. And now we just have to, walk the talk and showcase what we're doing and lead by example, and see that if we can, establish partnerships and be an example how other companies can, step up the challenge and push them forward on this movement on sustainability.
Claire, in your area, we're talking about, who's pushing this? Is it regulation? Is it governments? Is it the customer to some extent? And I guess in your area there is a further question, which is, is that particularly useful if there is regulation to push ED&I? So we could end up just having a falsified version of what we would call an ideal. What's your view on that?
Well, I think that's a valid question, because obviously, in the UK, for example, we do have various laws around ED&I. However, when you get to conversations such as targets, I'm working with an organisation at the moment who are talking about setting gender targets for women in senior positions. Now, as a woman who fits 2 of the 4 boxes on the original slide, being of an age and female, I still don't know if I'm comfortable with that, because really what you need to drive is an organisational cultural change, is a brand's genuine acceptance of equality. And in fact, we've changed the word equality to equity. Actually, everybody needs to feel valued. Everybody needs to have equity. And you can give quotas. You can obviously set legal obligations. And I think they will help and support and assist, but they won't drive the cultural change and the behaviour of a brand to embrace. So I think it's that leadership. I think, unfortunately for marketing, that they're so responsible for so much, but I think that leadership within the marketing, they're the voice of the customer externally. They need to be the voice of communication internally and support and drive some of these initiatives. I don't see these initiatives as an HR challenge. I see them much more as who are we as a brand, and who do we want to be with us, and what do we want our customers to feel. And I think the customers are beginning, as Gemma would say, to make some of those decisions. But I think, yes, they can legal requirements can support and can assist and maybe help. But fundamentally, I think it's a cultural challenge for a brand. And marketing comms, I think, have to take some ownership for that.
I've noticed, Gemma, thanks, Claire. I've noticed, Gemma, my own behavior of those in my family, where we have become far more aware of the origination of products, the values of service providers. Catarina's EDP is a great illustration of those values, that would be, hugely appealing to, I guess, a growing number of customers. So in the area of sustainability, are we looking at, and I guess we are looking at legislation pushing it, we're looking at governments pushing it. but also the importance of the consumer. What's your take on that?
I mean, in terms of the question around regulation, there is regulation being drawn up all the time, you know, single-use plastics, how you get rid of plastic when you ship it. As I said, the Green Claims Code to stop greenwashing, and I think America's taking pulled a group together as well to stem greenwashing over there. So I think regulation is inevitable when things get a bit out of control and we hit that tipping point. I think in terms of the question around how important is it for governments to provide leadership, absolutely it is, but we have a fundamental trust issue, certainly in the UK, with our government, and trust across the world. If you look at Edelman's trust barometer, is at the lowest point it's ever been, and actually businesses and CEOs are being looked to take on societal issues. And again, no secret that some of the world's biggest organizations have more power, influence, and money than all the governments put together. So, you know, business, whether it likes it or not, has put its hand up for this to drive change. And we talk to society all the time, and we are part of society, you know, and we need that, you know, that diversity of people within business to give different views. You know, it can't all be driven by a certain, if you look at our world leaders, you know, they're all of a certain pale, male and stale, no offense. But, you know, we do need that diversity to bring those different ideas in. So again, business has to lead the charge on this. And I think business will drive progress faster. And we also put, you know, the products and services out there, and we have the data and the insights to drive change and do things differently. And interestingly, I interviewed somebody the other day who over in the States, and he said, we've invented everything we need today to drive a more sustainable future, whether it's, you know, we can move away from fossil fuel. I know it's not that simple. I've been reading everything, you know, around different countries, but we have invented everything, and the technology and everything is there. We just have to be brave enough to drive it all forward and start thinking differently.
I think that's an absolutely such an important word. Actually, in all three of the presentations would be brave. I think we as marketers need to be brave, and braver than we have been, for all of the reasons that we've chatted about. Now, this session was kind of a review of what happened in our agenda outcomes, Agenda 2021 outcomes. We're going to be looking in a few minutes before we conclude today's session at the Agenda 2022 survey. But what I'd like you to the three of you to do is, you know, in a few short words, please, before we finish, I'd like you to think forward as well for me. And can you identify, you know, one or two big things that you think is going to be impacting upon the marketing profession in 22? What's out there? What do you think is going to come and grow in its importance, or come and surprise us? Claire, start with you.
I'm not a lover of the word authentic. It's used a lot. I am a huge supporter of the word brave, and I see, particularly through an Indian Eye focus, a brand that genuinely reflects the desire to embrace truly Indian Eye will not only attract great talent, because talent is looking at what you're doing, so it will attract great talent. I think they will also build a longer, sustainable relationship with their customer base, who are becoming more and more educated, and as you said of yourself, more and more aware and more able to decipher the good and the not so good.
Thank you. Gemma.
I think alongside brave, hope, the word hope. We are the storytellers in marketing, and we tell the stories, and I think we need to just tell the stories that give people hope, and also the, you know, the want and I guess, what's the word, to be able to know that we can do this if we all pull together. So I think, you know, marketing has a huge role, and we need to also be able to balance people, profit and planet.
Absolutely. And final word to you, Catarina. Turn your microphone on, Catarina.
No, the sustainability is going to start to be a commodity in the way you communicate. So I think the big challenge that we're going to see in 2022 is how companies differentiate themselves in this, digital world and make their voice come out in a sustainable. There's sustainable storytelling. So I think that the big challenge is how we differentiate ourselves in the way we position ourselves as a sustainable companies, that more and more everything's going to be sustainable. You're going to hear about sustainable events, sustainable brands, sustainable business. So that word needs to find a new meaning and new stories to explain and help the business differentiate themselves in this, in this scope of sustainability. So I think that's a big challenge, because I think all the trends that we've seen in 2021, they're going to keep, just developing. Video marketing, hybrid events that reach more and more people, all the digital, the way we communicate digitally, but the way we're going to have to tell our sustainable stories, that's going to be the big challenge, I think. Otherwise, it's going to be, everything's going to be sustainable and nobody's going to notice brands.
Yeah. To the three of you, thank you so much. Very, very powerful comments. Lots of things to think about. Thank you for attending and presenting at our little webinar today. So formally, I'd like to thank Catarina Barradas from Global Brand, or the Global Brand Unit Director at EDP, for her comments on brand strategy. To Gemma Butler, Marketing Director at the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK, for her thoughts around sustainability and for writing one of the best textbooks you can buy on sustainability. And also to Claire Kelmsey, Managing Director at Hayes Marketing in the UK, for her thoughts on ED and I. Fascinating, all three of you. I wish we had more time. We don't. But thank you all the same, and I look forward to seeing if your comments will appear as actions to come out of our 2022 agenda survey. So thank you for that. Thank you for now. Sandra, if we can return back to the slide deck, please. And we will conclude. I've got about a minute to wrap everything up. So as I've just been saying, the European Marketing Agenda for 22 is about to start. We're about to launch it. That's later this month. We will do a comparison piece of research from CMOs across Europe. So those of you online, look out for an email coming from Sandra or Ralph. And we thank our friends at Cantor again for pulling together, or they will pull together, the outcomes of that. We'll obviously share our findings through PowerPoint presentations and another webinar probably in February 22. And I look forward to sharing that with you. And we have more than 2,000 events, conferences, webinars, and experience exchange formats across Europe from national marketing associations, where we will share the outcome of our European marketing agenda. It really has become quite a resource and source of insight to marketing and from marketers. Next slide, please, Sandra. Thank you all again. Thank you for attending. Thank you, participants. Thank you for questions. Thank you to Chris for his questioning. I look forward to seeing you for the launch of the Agenda 22 outcomes in February. We've got some more events coming up. I think the next event that we have planned is our best practice for online events sometime early in 22. But for now, I wish you all a very good afternoon, and thank you again to our speakers, and thank you to Sandra at EMC for being in the background and making sure all the technology works. Thank you all. Good afternoon.